Okay, thank you, Fiona. Welcome everyone to today's webinar on understanding your assessment task. I'm Gemma Noon, one of the librarians from Ourimbah campus, and I'm joined by my colleague Fiona from Ourimbah as well. And yeah, today we're going to be just discussing how to unpack your assessment task from the perspective of learning support and also from the library perspective as well. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands within our footprint areas, the Awabakal, Darkinjung, Biripi, Worimi, Wonnarua and Eora nations. We also pay respect to the wisdom of elders past, present and emerging. I would like to extend this acknowledgement and pay my respects to any Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. So Fiona is going to start us off with some advice from our learning advisor colleagues. Take it away, Fiona.
Thanks, Gemma. So, hi everyone. As Gemma said, I'm also a librarian, and unfortunately our learning advisor colleagues weren't able to make it today. So the content that I'm going to present is based on materials that they have created. So we're going to start off imagining we've got an assessment task and we're feeling a bit unsure about what to do. So to understand your assessment task, there are 4 things you need to look for, 4 key pieces of information. And you can find that information in 3 places. So you might have an assignment question. So you'll get some key information from there. You might also have accompanying instructions. So that will give you extra information too. And then you might also have a marking rubric, and that's a great place to look to get this information. So the 4 pieces of information we're looking for are first, your direction or task words. That tells you what to do. And sometimes it'll use very specific verbs that you should think about what that means. So if it says analyze, think about what it means to analyze things. That's not the same as just describing something. So sort of take the time to unpack what the words are that are telling you what to do. The second thing is the content words. So that tells you what you'll actually be writing about. So what is the topic that you're covering or the specific research question you're trying to answer? Then there are the scope words. So this places some boundaries around your topic. So obviously any particular research question or topic can, have many different aspects to it, and you can't write about everything in your assignment. And so this provides some focus and some limitations for you. So that might be around the time frame you're looking at, the geographic region you're looking at, one particular aspect of the topic perhaps, and that gives you some boundaries so you know that what you're going to write for your assessment task will be a manageable task. And then the last thing you're looking for is any practical information that tells you details like how many words you need to write, what sort of formatting you need to do, what type of piece of writing you're doing or what product you're creating. And the important thing is to realize that often these instructions actually carry some of the marks. And so it's a great thing to look in your marking rubric too and see how many marks are assigned to things like correct referencing, so that you make sure that you don't lose marks that you really should be able to get just by following those instructions. So on the next slide, we're going to look at an example. Okay, so here's a question and some instructions. How does gender inequality affect student outcomes in Australian secondary schools? Write a 1,500-word essay identifying 3 different examples of gender inequality and evaluating the impact that each of these examples has on student outcomes. Use APA 7th referencing, citing at least 6 recent peer-reviewed journal articles. So let's see if we can find those 4 key pieces of information here. The first thing is our task words, telling us what to do. So I can see it tells us to write an essay, but it also specifies some things that should be included. We have to identify 3 different examples, and we have to evaluate the impact that these examples have. So that's giving us some instructions on what we have to do, what is expected. Then we've got the content or the topic we're going to be writing on. So I can see some words in the question that tell me what our topic is. We've got gender inequality, student outcomes, and we're also talking about Australian secondary schools. And this is where it's interesting that sometimes the content words and the scope words have a little bit of overlap. So we can't write everything about gender inequality and how it affects student outcomes in 1,500 words. So our instructions have put some boundaries on that by saying they want you to focus on Australian secondary schools. Also, the fact that we know that it's a 1,500 word essay places some boundary as well. And the fact that we're told to cite at least 6 recent peer-reviewed journal articles also gives us a bit of an idea of how much reading we're expected to do and how broad or narrow the scope will be for this particular assignment. And then the last thing is the practical information. So I've already talked about some of this, 1,500 words. So often the rubric will tell you what happens if you go over or under. So it's important to read that. We're told specifically that we have to identify 3 different examples of gender inequality. So it's important to realise that if you do 2 really, really well, you still haven't done what you are asked to do in the assessment task. So you have to make sure that you actually do what you've been told to do. APA 7th referencing style is the style you're expected to do, and the fact that you're going to cite at least 6 recent peer-reviewed journal articles, that tells you what your marker is expecting to see in your reference list and in your writing. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide. So apart from sort of understanding your task, it's also really important to understand what sort of product you're expected to create. In the example question that I just went through, the product was an essay. And essays have a particular structure and particular expectations, but there are different sorts of products you might be asked to produce. It might be a report, it might be a review of some sort. There's several different types of review assignments you can do. It might be a reflection piece. You might have to create a presentation, like an oral presentation, or a set of PowerPoint slides, that sort of thing, or a poster. Or it might be something that as a group you have to produce. And sometimes when you do group work, you have a product you're producing, but you have to produce something reflecting on how the group has worked together. So it's really important to know what sort of thing you're expected to produce. And our learning advisors have put together a whole stack of really wonderful online resources. And one of the online resources is a page that goes into detail about different types of assignments so that you can see what's expected, but also examples. So we'll just take a look at the next slide, which is just a screenshot from the online resource that I was just talking about. So on that page, I've looked through the different assignment tasks and I've chosen annotated bibliography, which is different to an essay, a different type of product. And on that, it has some explanatory text that tells you what's expected of you if you're asked to write an annotated bibliography. And then it has an example. So this is an actual example from a student who has given permission for their example to be shared in this online resource. And so this is just a snippet of part of the annotated bibliography, but you can see this is just an example to show you how wonderful this online resource is and how helpful it would be. So this little example is showing you that the first part of the annotated bibliography is the full reference of the journal article that you're including in this bibliography. And then underneath that, you write a little description, so a summary of what was said in that journal article. And then the next thing that you have to do is you actually have to make some sort of evaluative statement. So evaluate the article in some way. And this is where you're demonstrating to the marker your critical thinking skills. So it's really important not to leave that out. And then the last step is a summary statement that links this article to the overall question or topic that your annotated bibliography is addressing. So there's similar information to this about other assignment types too, and I really recommend to you that this is a great resource. So then my last bit is just one slide talking about how to get help from the learning advisors. So they have these self-help resources, these online resources, which are wonderful. They also have workshops. They have consultations, which means that you can book in to spend some one-on-one time with a learning advisor to discuss your issues. Perhaps you don't know how to construct an essay from the ideas that you've got. You've made notes, but you're not confident writing an essay and you need some help with that. They can talk you through that. And then we've also got a product called Studiosity, which you can link to straight from Canvas, which is 24/7 support. So lots of options, and there's a link on this slide, and I think Gemma is now just going to take us to the website just so that you can see what you're looking for when you get there.
Yes, I'll just share my screen again and pop over to the website. Okay, so
Yep.
we are after academic learning support. So this is the website that Fiona's been talking about. So we have information about the learning advisors, peer-assisted study sessions, Studiosity, academic learning support contact details, the online resources that Fiona has mentioned as well. All of that's available on the university website. Okay, so we'll return to our presentation.
Thank you. And I'll just mention that if you have any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat and I'll endeavour to answer them, or I can interrupt Gemma if it's something that we need to talk to everyone about.
Yes, thank you, Fiona, for reminding us all of that. All right, so thinking back to our example questions, we have a few others from different disciplines. So we've got a health-focused one and an engineering-focused one, as well as our education and sociology type question. So if we have a look at these, we can still apply the same concepts that Fiona was talking about, even if it's for a slightly different discipline or essay question. So we have, for people suffering from non-specific low back pain, is ibuprofen more effective at reducing pain than paracetamol? How can the impact of heavy rain on road surfaces in urban areas be minimised? And our third question that we're already familiar with, how does gender inequality affect student outcomes in Australian secondary schools? So if we have a look at that in a little bit more detail, you can start to recognise those content type words that tell you what kinds of keywords you might want to actually search in the library catalogue. So now I'm going to talk about analysing your question in a little bit more detail. Now we've kind of got familiar with how to pick out those keywords. The next step would be to sit down with a subject-specific dictionary or encyclopedia and think about other synonyms and related terms to your keywords that might have a similar meaning. And it's really important to not to miss this step and think about the other keywords that you might want to use, because that helps you to construct an efficient search. and it helps you to ensure that you are not accidentally missing out on any useful resources just because the terminology in your question is slightly different to the terminology out there in the literature that you'll find in the library catalogue or the library databases. So we can see here, if we look at this question in a bit more detail, there's quite a few synonyms for gender inequality, things like gender discrimination, gender gap, gender bias, gender imbalance, student outcomes, learning outcomes, educational outcomes, student achievement. We've got a few different options for the kind of limit in terms of location and place. So there's a little technique there where we've shortened Australia to the root of the word and then put an asterisk symbol. Sometimes the symbol for truncation can vary between databases, but certainly if you use the library catalogue, and for most databases, it is an asterisk. And we finally have the synonym for secondary schools, high schools. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is kind of putting all of this together. So we have a few more search tips that you might want to use when you're constructing your search. Now, you remember from the previous slide that quite a few of our keywords were actually phrases. So we've got 2 or more words that we want to actually keep together in the order that we've typed them to keep that concept in context. So if you're looking for something like gender inequality or social media, you can put that phrase in quotation marks, and that'll ensure that you get relevant results back. So it's not just searching for gender by itself or inequality by itself, it'll search for the phrase. So that's a really useful tip. Truncation, I've also mentioned before. So it's very, very useful for quite a few different words that are kind of topic specific, and you can work out as you look at your question whether or not you think there may be words that could benefit from using truncation. Keep in mind, though, that you don't want to combine these within the one search term. So if you tried to truncate gender or inequality at the same time that you were phrase searching it, that would not work because you're kind of confusing it. You're telling it to do 2 things at once. So you kind of need to do like one or the other for each search term. Also think about things like synonyms, as I mentioned before. It's not only synonyms in terms of, similar words for a topic, but, there's often different ways of saying things from country to country. For example, elevator and lift, mobile phone, cell phone, and spelling can vary geographically as well. So American versus Australian spelling, for example. The other thing to take into account is how you're actually going to link your keywords together. So we have 3 different Boolean operators, and, or, and not. So and will narrow down your search. So if you're linking 2 keywords together with and, it will only bring up results which have both of those keywords in it. Or will broaden your search. That can be quite useful sometimes if you have a list of synonyms on a concept or a topic, and you just want to see all of the information that's out there about that topic. So you would do a broad search linking your synonyms with or. And not is also a way of narrowing your search, but please use it with caution because that can actually exclude certain results when you use that, and it could potentially also eliminate useful results as well. So by all means, feel free to play around with those, but I would say when you're first starting to get used to searching, and is probably the best Boolean operator to use, and it's going to help you to find things quickly and efficiently by narrowing your search straight away. So now I'm going to move back to my browser and do a bit of a search demonstration of the library catalogue. So bear with me just a moment. All right, so we'll pop over to the library homepage, newcastle.edu.au/library. And if you are elsewhere on the University of Newcastle website, there's this little blue box up in the top right-hand corner of your screen with the 3 little lines. We call that the hamburger menu. If you click on that, there is a link to the library. So you can always get to the library page if you can't remember the URL, or you can always Google it. It comes up the top of the search results as well. So if we scroll down a little bit underneath our library welcome banner, library search is our library catalogue. So I'm going to run a search based on some of the keywords that we've already talked about. So I'm going to go back to our question that we've already analysed about gender inequality. But to start with, I'm just going to show you what it actually does if you were to type in gender inequality and not do anything else to it. So if we run this search, we're going to get 584,795 results. So that is a lot. And that's far more than we could ever hope to look through. So we need to do something to improve our search. So one way that we can do this is by doing a phrase search, as I mentioned before. Now, as soon as I do that, it's prompting me to look at an encyclopedia record for gender inequality. And I could do that if I wanted to get a little bit of background information about that topic. But I'm just going to stay in this search and try and improve it from here, because I really want to try and find some journal articles about this topic. So you can see straight away when we do a phrase search, that's rapidly improved our results, 124,000, but it's still, again, way too many. So I'm going to add some more keywords and link them together with my Boolean operator and. So I am going to add student outcome, and I'm going to add secondary school, all in quotation marks because they're all phrases rather than individual keywords. So if I press our little search icon here, the magnifying glass, and run that search again, we've got 183 results. So it's a good idea if you are looking for journal articles to try and add a few more keywords, maybe 3 or 4, because journal articles are on such specific topics that adding that information is really useful, and it helps us to narrow down and find results that are actually relevant to our essay topic. The other thing that we need to do is to limit by content type. So I can click on journal article here. That's going to bring our results down to 126, which is very good. The other thing we need to do is click on the peer-reviewed limit here. So peer-reviewed journal articles are the best quality journal articles. They've been reviewed by a panel of the author's peers before they've actually been published in the academic journal. So they've been vetted and fact-checked and quality-checked by a panel of experts in that subject area before they've been published, so you know that it's reliable scholarly information. Now, the other thing that we can do, if we just scroll down a little bit more, is limit by discipline and subject terms. So you'll see if you scroll through here, up the top, we've got some which sort of really quite relate to our question. We've got education, maybe some of the psychology articles might be useful, or perhaps some of the sociology and social history, but you'll also see that there are some irrelevant discipline results coming up too, because we're looking at the library catalogue, so we are searching all of the library's holdings across all of the different disciplines that we have at the university. So we can limit a little bit more. Now, I would like to focus on the articles on the topic of education at the moment. And then if I want to narrow down even further, what I can do is look at these subject terms and have a look at the articles which have actually been tagged as having some of these subject terms in them. So that's going to, again, increase the relevance of the results that we're looking at and bring up the articles with specific subject terms to the top of our search if I tick some of these. So, for example, I might want to look at the ones which focus on academic achievement as well. So if I do that, we're looking at 33 results. And again, that's much more manageable for you to look through and browse through than if we were looking through hundreds of thousands. Okay, if you want to actually read one of these articles, what you can do is just click on the title and it will take you through to the platform which actually hosts that journal article. And if you just click on full text online, that will take you through to the PDF. So if we return to our search, one thing I'll mention as well is if at any point you think, oh, I've made a bit of a mistake, I want to remove that limit, what you can do is just go up to the top of your search and look at the limits panel on the left-hand side. You can see the list of all the limits that we've applied to our search. Just click on the cross next to the limit that you want to remove, and that will get rid of it and return to how you had the search to start with before you applied that limit. Okay, so that is searching the library catalogue. There's also another place that you can look for subject-specific resources. Now, for a question like this, which is kind of an education/sociology question, I might want to look at the subject resource guide for education or the subject resource guide for sociology to get an idea of the different journal databases which are useful for that topic. So if, for example, I had been told that I need to look for sociological sources, then I would definitely be looking for articles in the sociology-focused databases. So I'm going to scroll down here underneath the library catalogue, and in the access box, we have the link to the subject resource guides. They're in alphabetical order, so I can just scroll down to S for sociology, and it takes me through. So I mentioned before using subject-specific dictionaries and encyclopedias where you're at the stage where you're analysing your question, breaking it down, trying to work out what synonyms and related terms you might want to search. And there's a list here of subject-specific dictionaries and encyclopedias that link through to the library catalogue, so you can read the electronic versions of those texts. And on the left-hand side here, we have a list of sociology-focused databases that you might want to search in order to find some wonderful articles to answer your question. And when you're searching those databases, it's the same kind of principle that we were talking about when we were searching the library catalogue. You're breaking down your question, you're thinking about what keywords you want to use, what your search strategy might be, and how you want to link those keywords together. And then you can go through and do your search. So I'll return to our main presentation now with our PowerPoint and just move along a little bit. So having looked at some results in the library catalogue, things to look out for when you're actually trying to evaluate the results that you've got. Keep in mind things like the titles of the articles that are coming up, the titles of the journals, like do you see any keywords for your topics? Like if you're looking for journals that are about sociology, is there a hint that it's actually a sociological journal in the title of the journal? For example, is it actually called the Journal of Sociology? The subject headings that are coming up in the articles that you found, are they actually matching the kinds of keywords that you're looking for? And have you actually even maybe being able to find other subject headings which are also relevant to your topic, which you mightn't have necessarily thought of on your own? So they can actually give you some clues of maybe some other words that you might want to add to your search. Keywords, again, really think about, okay, if you're getting no matches at all, have you made a spelling mistake? Maybe you're not using quite the right terminology and you might need to rethink your keywords, things like that. Pay attention to the abstracts of the journal articles that you found. So if you just have a bit of a skim read of the abstract, that can save you a lot of time, because that can help you to work out whether or not you want to take the time to read the entire article or not, because your research time and your study time is very precious, and you don't want to waste any of it going down sort of irrelevant rabbit holes. And the bibliographies of the articles that you find as well. So if you find a journal article and you think, this is exactly the kind of journal article that I want to find and use, I want to find more like this, have a look at the bibliography, because that can give you some clues to some other sources that you might want to actually look up that you mightn't necessarily have found otherwise. So please remember to take comprehensive notes as you're doing your research. Take notes not only about your search strategy and what keywords and the combinations of keywords that you've used and any kind of search tips and tricks, but also remember where you got your information from so that you can reference it correctly. Because if you can't remember where you got a source, doesn't matter how good it is, if you can't actually reference that source, you won't be able to use it in your assignment. So please make sure you take notes, because that's going to help you to work a lot more efficiently too. And particularly if you're working across multiple study sessions as well, keeping track of what you've actually searched before can help keep you on track as well. Now, we have a number of different self-help resources in the library. As I mentioned before, we have the subject resource guides. We have our digital capabilities guide, which has, it's really, really useful if you are actually studying from home or doing a lot of online study. That can help you to familiarize you with the university's online study environment and various different digital resources that you have available to you as a student. We also have an ebook guide, which is quite useful if you are new to electronic books, because they are slightly different depending on who the ebook provider is and who's published it. So that can help you to get your head around how to use ebooks. And we also have lots of library tutorials that you can also use. Finally, I'd like to wrap up by just mentioning how you can get help from the library if you need it. We have a number of different help services that are suitable for different kinds of questions. So if you have a quick question, you know, that you would like to be answered quite quickly, and, you know, it's not too involved, you could ask it on library chat, you could give us a call, you could email us. If you have a more involved question that's library related and it's about to do with your assignments, for example, something to do with finding information for your assignment. So you might have started to search the library catalogue, but you've got a little bit stuck, or you're having trouble accessing a particular resource, or you would like a bit of guidance with your referencing because you've got a little bit stuck. If you want some assistance with a bibliographic management program like EndNote, you can book an appointment with a librarian such as myself or Fiona, and it's a 25-minute appointment, and you can just have a bit of a chat with us either in person at a library or online. So you can get sent a Zoom link at a time that suits you for an online appointment. So I'll just pop out of the presentation for a moment and show you what that help page actually looks like. So if we go through to here, this is our library help and information page. The way that you actually get to there from the library homepage, if you scroll down underneath the main banner, over here to the right, we have this Ask the Library icon. If you click on that, that gets you to the help and information page for the library. It's got links to all of our contact details and how you can actually, it takes you to the booking page for Book and Librarian, a database problems form if you're having issues with those kinds of things, commonly asked questions in the library FAQs, and further down the page, it actually has the chat there, so you can type in a question and speak to a library staff member during the operating hours that we have there above the library chat box. Okay, well, that pretty much ends our presentation for today. Thank you very much for your attention. Fiona, do we have any questions in the chat at the moment?